last night we had spoken about pranayama, and he was saying that I had given a very nice, thank you, talk on the spirituality of pranayama. And he's saying, well, what about the spirituality of yoga? Well, yoga itself is spiritual. It's like saying, describe for me the wetness of water. Or what's hot about fire? Fire is hot, water is wet. There's no place that water ends and wet begins. No place fire ends and heat begins. In the same way, there's no place that yoga ends and spirituality begins, or even vice versa. Yoga is spirituality. Spirituality is yoga. But yoga is not just exercise. That's the dilemma. Yoga literally means union. That's what the Sanskrit word means, to unite. And it's a union, ultimately, of ourselves to God. That's what it originally meant. In the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna speaks pretty continually about yoga. I don't know how many times the word is used, but I would imagine it's hundreds. And there's only, 700 verses of it. It's a scripture on yoga. But nowhere does he speak about any of the actual postures. He doesn't mention Trikonasana. He doesn't mention Shirshasana. He doesn't mention any of the postures that we do. He doesn't mention limberness or flexibility or strength or straight legs or bent legs or anything like that. It's all about how we live. So yoga is our spiritual life. It's the union of this being as which I identify, this very small, very separate, very individual, very fallible, complex-ridden individual being, and the divine. The wholeness, the completeness, the infinite nature, the no beginning, no end, no complexes, existence of God. That's what yoga is. In that, there are a whole variety of aspects. Patanjali gave it very, very neatly and nicely. He gave us 8 limbs of a tree of yoga. Okay, what does yoga look like? Well, yoga begins with how we interact in the world. Root of yoga, ahimsa, nonviolence. It's the very, very, very first part of the first limb of Patanjali's 8 limbs of yoga. So we begin with nonviolence, truthfulness. We move all the way up through how we live in the world, how we live with ourselves, the yamas and the niyamas, our outer behavior, our inner practice. We move up through asana. Those are the postures. Those are the exercises. That's limb 3. Now, in that, there's 2 aspects to asana. One is simply, if you're going to sit to meditate, it's much easier to sit to meditate if your knees don't hurt. It's much easier to sit and meditate if your back doesn't hurt. It's much harder to concentrate on chanting your mantra when your back is killing you, or your knees are killing you, or your hips are killing you. And so on one very simple, very basic level, keep the body healthy, keep it in shape. The body's a temple. It is your vehicle to awakening. If you cannot sit and meditate, you will have a difficult time awakening. All right, get those knees and hips limber. Get that back strong so you can sit. On another level of asana, though, on another way of looking at these 8 limbs, they're not necessarily progressive. I've heard commentaries on them that each of them in and of itself can be a way into the river of oneness. Like all of the different platforms on the banks of Ganga can be used to get into Ganga. You don't actually have to walk all the way from Lakshman Jhula down here to go in. You actually could go in any of the ways. An asana actually can be used as a way in. Now, that being said, I believe it's very difficult. I believe that when we are focused on the physical body, especially its aches, its pains, its weaknesses, it's very difficult to be connected with God. I know for me personally, I have an asana practice simply as an antidote to the fact that I sit most of the day. But I need a meditative practice. I can't do it through my asanas. On the other hand, I had the very, very great honor and blessing of being in the room practicing with BKS Iyengar while he was still alive. And his eyes, when he came out of some of the most difficult asanas that he had held way longer than people a quarter of his age, his eyes looked like he had come out of the deepest meditation. So I know it's possible. I saw it in his eyes. But I think it's very difficult. I haven't seen anyone else able to enter that stream through asana. And then we keep going upward. I'm not going to go through all of the 8 limbs of yoga as our time's running out, but the core point is it ends with samadhi, which is divine bliss, ecstasy, that oneness. So that's what yoga is the union. And whether you begin by working your way up, whether you enter anywhere along the way, through your actions, through your postures, through your breath, through your attention, through your meditation, whether they build on each other, whether they're independent, or whether you enter through the paths that Lord Krishna gives us in the Gita, path of service, karma yoga, serve your way to enlightenment, jnana yoga, the path of wisdom and understanding, inquire your way to union, path of bhakti, love your way to union. But of course, they all become one. It's not one or the other. I mean, you begin in one, but ultimately, regardless of which of the 3 you begin with, they all come together. If I love you, obviously I'm going to want to serve you. It's why we do nice things for the people we love. If I love you, I'm going to want to know more about you. If I love you, I'm going to listen to you tell me about your dreams in the morning, even though ordinarily I wouldn't care, but I care because I love you. So they all end up going together. So it doesn't matter where you start as long as we know that the ultimate goal is union. And that's what yoga is. So yoga is spiritual. If you're doing yoga without spirituality, you're exercising. Nothing wrong in that. Exercise is a great thing. We all need more of it, or most of us do anyway. But we just need to be clear about what it is we're doing. Calisthenics, aerobics, stretching, weight training, no problem. But then let's call it what it is. Just because my arms are in a certain direction or I'm upside down doesn't make it yoga. If it's not part of the full package if it's not in the service of ultimately my union.